point, Drew, do you mind just putting the link to the Canvas page into the chat so people can have access to that? There's a PDF of the slides in there, as well as some resources that we might go over a little bit. And so, yeah, it's nice to have some of those to follow along. Yeah, cool. Well, welcome everyone. This is the third workshop of the Jobs Beyond the Tenure Track in Academia. My name's Carolyn. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a career counselor with the College of Education Human Development. And so we're excited to have you here. We'll have 2 more sessions after this, the next 2 weeks, and then all of the recordings will be available most definitely by the end of the 5 series for you to review or to be able to pause and work through or watch at your own sort of pace. So we'll get us started. Let's see. And I fully encourage video, no video. The only thing is we ask folks to keep the audio muted so that there's no sounds and distractions. And then a reminder that this will be recorded. And so we'll end the recording right around the time that we end the content portion of it. All right, so today's session is going to be around job search and exploration and research. And so that's going to encompass researching organizations, finding opportunities, and analyzing whether a opportunity is a fit for you and how do you do that. So this is our job search process. The first session really focused on self-assessment and identity, evaluating interests, skills, experiences, things like that. The second session was really about identity and understanding that transition that oftentimes happens when you open yourself up to new possibilities or a broader set of possibilities, and how that can have an introspective impact on people as they're navigating through that. And so today's session is going to be really about the exploration and the research, and the last 2 sessions will go over application material, interviewing, as well as evaluating job offers and negotiation. A reminder about the context of this workshop is that it is a preparation for your job search, and that their primary focus is going to be on non-academic job searches. That's the title, and that the sessions inform each other, but they can also be taken in independently as well too. And then these are a couple of resources that are available for you to use as you navigate through the workshops. So we have the Canvas page, finding if you have access to a career services office, how to get connected with them, as well as the UCLA toolkit and Beyond the Professorate. All U of M students have access to that. And so definitely utilize that resource. Okay, so that's kind of just a introduction, a recap. So industry research. When we think about the job search, I like to break it down to a couple components. Knowing yourself, which the first session goes over in depth, understanding. And then the next portion is understanding the industry, the organizations that you're interested in, as well as the roles that you are going to be applying to. And so knowing the company, knowing the organization is going to be able to help you tailor materials, and as well as clearly communicate how your skills, your unique perspective and values contribute to the growth and the progress of an organization or a role. So some things that you might want to consider when you're looking at organizations are, what are their goals, values, and mission that kind of drive the way that they do their work? Are there specific service or products that they specialize in, as well as the audience of their clientele? And then thinking about what roles or titles exist within the organization. And so one of the things that is a bit tricky to figure out are organizational structures. And so we'll talk a little bit about how you can get some insight related to that. Number of employees, and so people work in a variety of organizations. Some folks work for big organizations, Sofa works for smaller organizations, and I think with our economy right now, you can find employment with a variety of sizes of organizations. So it's also helpful to know the number of employees if you're able to do that. Staying up to date about news articles or updates, especially for particular companies or organizations, that's super helpful. I recently found out that Tesla came out with or showcased like a human droid. And so like those are the kind of things you might be interested in and thinking about how does that connect to your personal goals as well too. And then looking for competitors or similar organizations that are doing within the same field, but maybe have different opportunities. And so how can you find those organizations and find opportunities within those? I like to include this last one because sometimes people come from the perspective that they want to fit 100% of the qualifications. And if you're fitting 100% of the qualifications, wonderful. You're probably also a little overqualified, because if you're fitting all of the qualifications, it might mean that you know how to do the job, you know how to do it well. And so where are the opportunities of growth for you? And so this last one kind of addresses what are the unique areas that the field or organization is trying to grow in, and how can you help fill those gaps so that you're utilizing your skills, but also helping the organization grow, and that'll help you in turn grow as an individual as well too. And so when you are looking at opportunities, we say anywhere to like 60 to 100% is where you can kind of gauge if you might be interested in meaning, if you feel like you meet those qualifications. So 60% is a good measure as well too. And to remind folks that you don't have to be 100% meet the qualifications of a written job description to apply for it. Some resources that are available to help find these different pieces of information are LinkedIn. You can also use Indeed, Glassdoor. The U of M libraries have a couple of subscriptions that you can use. We're going to be going over those a little bit. And the professional association specific to the fields that you're interested in, as well as informational interviews. And so information interviews are going to be a big chunk of what we talk about today. And before you kind of go in, or as you're going through understanding, finding information, we recommend creating a list of career priorities or knowledge that you want to know. And so that helps you tailor the kind of information you're looking for. And sometimes that list might grow, or you might figure out what are the higher priorities for you as you continue to find these different pieces of information. So I'm going to go into a little bit more depth into how to use some of these resources to find information about organizations or industries. First, we have LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a pretty popular one. I like to say that LinkedIn's a good place to build connections, but it's also a really good place to do research. And so when you put in a keyword, here we have environmental education. There are different categories that pop up. And so we have people, we have company, we have groups, jobs, events, posting, etc. What you want to do is you want to take a look at the companies that might fit into this category or might have these keywords in there. And then you can also look at groups that you can be a part of that, and you can set alerts for if there's new postings or things like that, so that you can see what's going on, research some of the organizations. I also like to mention that within people, you can review some of their titles. And if you click on their profiles, oftentimes you'll be able to see what they've done in the past. And that can also help individuals assess if a potential connection has a job that maybe they are interested in the future, what did their career trajectory look like that led them to that opportunity, or reaching out and saying, hi, my name is this. I see that you're currently working with this organization doing this. I'm really excited to also continue on into that field. Would you mind having coffee or meeting virtually over Zoom? I'd love to hear more about your journey of how you got there. And so even these opportunities and knowing what kind of titles exist within organizations is a really great way to learn about opportunities and research organizations that you might be interested in going into. Another resource to use is professional associations. And so the easiest way to do it is to ask some of your instructors, faculty members, folks you're doing information interviews with, what are some professional associations they're part of, as well as just putting in a keyword for the industries you're interested in, and then professional association. Sometimes they are member-based. Oftentimes I find that you can use a lot of the resources without being a paying member. And so that's usually what I recommend, is like scour their website a little bit, see what kind of information is available on there before you request for a membership, which oftentimes include a fee. So information that you might find on a professional association webpage might be networking opportunities, blogs that or publications that indicate best practices or advancements in the field, as well as conferences, professional development opportunities, ways to get involved, such as advocacy and jobs, as well as maybe sometimes they have employer partners or important stakeholders that they build strong relationships with. So these are some of the information that you might find. And this next page just shows an example. This is the American Anthropological Association, and right on their homepage, they have these sort of key navigation points. And so they might have events coming up, information that is helpful. The one that I selected was Advance Your Career, because I'm interested in what kind of support they provide for folks who are interested in this industry. So after I selected that, Advance Your Career, they have a job board, they have career resources, fellowships, and even mentoring. So these are all really great resources that can help you thrive and learn more about the opportunities and information that might be helpful for you as you're navigating through what are important factors in your own career search. In addition to resources, the U of M libraries, they're a really fantastic resource. They have many subscriptions that you can use. When you go onto their homepage, they have these different categories that you can select. And so if you are looking for organization profiles, if you're looking for industry market information or recent news articles, you can kind of filter by the resources that are going to give you that information. The two I selected are more related to organization profiles. And the first one is Hoover's. And so Hoover's helps you find different organizations. You can filter it based off of the location, the company size. I just selected industry, and you can browse the category of industries that are included on there. And then I usually recommend selecting this primary and secondary because if an industry might be manufacturing, for example, they might also have a secondary label or a code that allows you to pick up more companies within that category of industry that it's in. And so this is a really great one. And these are all the different sort of filters that you can use. The second one I'd like to highlight is reference solutions. And so you can look for business information as well as looking for jobs and internship postings. And so the internship posting one's pretty similar to the other job search engines, and so I won't go over that one. But for this one here, if you press search or more information, it'll take you to this page, and similar to the Hoover's website, you can press keywords or the specific sector, put in a key term, and I think I have, okay, keywords, select keywords, put in a keyword, and then you can select which ones you're interested in. So these are different categories of industries. And so you'll see for climates, they have heating specialists. They also have air temperature, like air conditioning. And so maybe what this individual's most interested in is meteorological consultants. And then you press results, and it pulls up organizations that are related to this specific area there. So these are two good ones to find, and just company locations, parent companies, how many employees they have. Sometimes they can give you a couple key contacts and their titles. So these are two really good ones that I recommend from the U of M library, among with a lot of other ones. Some of them also share financial information, among other things, and news articles too. The next place that you can look for information is Glassdoor. So Glassdoor is going to be a little bit less about organization profiles and a little bit more oriented towards reviews. And so hearing from people who have worked there in the past, my preface with this usually is that similar to, let's say, reading a comment on a YouTube video or a social media post, you can never really know the context in which people wrote those comments. And so it's helpful to be a critical consumer of information and know that these reviews are based off of people's lived experiences. They might have different identities that they hold. And so that might influence the kind of experience that they've had. And if that's important for you, and definitely keep that in mind, but know that people's different lived experiences is going to shape the kind of experience they have within an organization. And so if you go onto Glassdoor, you put in a organization name. Here we have Antia Group. It's going to give you a little bit of an overview, the reviews, the kind of jobs that are available. They also get some salary information, which is helpful when you're thinking about if a position or an organization is a fit. And then reviews related to interviews, benefits, and sometimes they have photos as well too. So this is a really great one that can be helpful to find reviews and hear about people's different experiences. And then workplace culture. This is probably one of the hardest ones to decipher when you're researching organizations. And so the hustle is one where you can do a little bit of research. The other one I like to recommend is the Wall Street Journal. And so as a U of M student, you have a subscription through the institution for the Wall Street Journal. And so those might be good places. You can also just Google a name of an organization or company and put news, and you'll see a lot of articles. And so the understanding what's important for you in the workplace can help you figure out what kind of information you're looking for. And I usually like to say that it's for you to gather information to make the best decision for yourself related to what you want, what you feel like you can navigate in a work environment, instead of looking for like red flags or green flags or anything like that, but understanding what you're looking for and how that aligns or doesn't align with an organization's culture or workplace or approach even can help you figure out if, based off of what you're hearing, if it's a place where you feel like you can navigate and grow in your career, or if it's a place that you don't think you'll be able to thrive, and it's not an investment of energy you want to put in. And I see we have some chats, but I'm going to hold us until the end to reply to chats. But Drew and Maria, if there's anything you feel like you might be able to respond to in there, definitely do that. We also encourage you to talk to one another in the chat as well too. And so if folks have insight that you want to share with one another, definitely do that. Okay, so those are a couple of resources that can help you gather information about industries, as well as organizations or companies that you're interested in. So next is, we're going to be talking a little bit about building connections. What's the purpose of that and how does that support your own career exploration process and job search journey? Okay, so what is networking? According to Webster Dictionary, networking is the exchange of information or services among individuals, groups, or institutions, specifically the cultivation of productive relationships for employment or business. And so here you see exchange, which really what we want to emphasize is that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And so remember that good relationship building or revolves around reciprocity, and that you really want to build these relationships before you are actively seeking work or you are looking for help, and you really want to seek people's advice or maybe their expertise, hearing their stories, and that's what builds these strong relationships. And then when you are in a position where you are looking for opportunities, it yields to a more receptive conversation of, I would love to be able to help you out because of the relationship that we have, versus, oh, this individual is only looking for my connections, and that can feel a bit transactional. And so in addition to finding information through informational interviews, there's also information that you can give as well too. And so as a student at the University of Minnesota, you have these connections that you built here. You have navigation skills, resources that you've collected. And so being able to do that is also a really valuable component of this relationship building. And I like this here. It says, act like a host, not a guest. So when you invite people over, you might offer them something, a beverage, you might offer them a snack, and you might ask them how they're doing. That's how you want to engage when you are doing these relationship building, when you go to conferences or you have a presentation. I know a lot of colleges do the 3-minute thesis competition. I know our college does that. And so those are places where you can practice being a good host and engaging in conversation with people so you can start building those relationships. Okay, here I'm going to talk a little bit about how candidates look for opportunities versus how what the employer's hiring preferences are. And so typically people are submitting resumes or looking at postings, and then they might go into more of that communal approach to looking for opportunities. Whereas for employers, sometimes they'll start within the organization. They'll look at internal hires of where people want to grow or move, and then they'll slowly start to make it larger and larger. And so typically, candidates are going wide and then narrow, and then employers are going narrow to wide. And that's just the kind of access that you have as well too. And so a nice middle ground are these friends and families, the contacts, the network. That's where you can find a little bit of that middle space there. And so sometimes by the time it gets to a posting, there are already people that have heard about the opportunity, or they've already submitted an application. The organization might have already gone through an internal notification process already. And so that's why having these connections can be really valuable, so that you can be one of those first people who hear about an opportunity as well too. So let's assess who's in your network, who are connections that you can reach out to. And I always recommend starting with who you know and identifying what are the areas that you're looking to gather information from, and how you can use the connections you have to reach out to them. So friends and family, those are neighbors. Those are people who can definitely, they might not be in your field of interest, but they might know someone who knows another person. Places you worked in the past, mentors or faculty members, advisors, they're all wonderful people who are in your network. Career offices or colleagues, and so many of you might have worked in the past before, and those are going to be folks that you can reconnect with. Let's see, we have places of worship, community spaces that you're in. Maybe you volunteer somewhere. I know a lot of people just ran the marathon, and so like a lot of people are a part of those communities that you can even start a conversation with, in terms of like, what do you do for work, or like, what are things, who are you outside of this identity that you carry in this space? And so those are a couple places. One resource that we do have is our Alumni Association, which is really, which is called the Maroon and Gold Network, which is where you can connect with U of M alumni, similar to LinkedIn. And then the bottom list here are just additional people that you can like spark up a conversation with and talk a little bit about. Let's say you go to a hairstylist, and they've been cutting hair for 20 years, and they have folks who they talk to who are in a variety of fields. That's a point of connection that you can also build a relationship based off of. And so I say, don't be afraid to talk about your career. Don't be afraid to talk about that piece of who you are, because it's oftentimes a big piece of how you navigate the world and the kind of relationships that you're hoping to build. And then I'll also share this one just as a visual. See, you hear, this is a activity that you can do. You can take a blank piece of paper. If you want to make it digital like this, you can definitely do that. But start with you in the middle, and then think about different relationships that you have, different communities that you're a part of. As I mentioned, University of Minnesota, there are all these resources and all these relationships that you're already building, that you can go back to and revisit and understand how you can build a stronger relationship with friends and family, community, employers and colleagues. Those are all places where you can start to nurture those relationships. And so what you can do is you can start with a circle of you and then start branching out and seeing who are the people in my connection and who might they know. Or if you don't know who they might know, you can always ask. And tell people where you're at, ask them if they have any suggestions on other people that they might be able to connect you with too. So I keep talking about this informational interview. Informational interviews are an informal conversation, very discussion-like or conversational, to hear about people's experiences in their field or within a role, or to hear about how they navigated life even. And so informational interviews are really great for that. One of the benefits is it helps you gather information so you can make confident, informed decisions about your own career. And we already talked a little bit about who you can ask. I always say the worst. If you ask, the worst thing they can say is no, and you're kind of in the same position that you were in before. They can happen anywhere, in person, phone, email, Zoom, virtually. So we live in a world where we have access to connections now that we didn't really before. And the next slide, I think, yeah, it's going to show just maybe a template of an email that you might send. Let's see. I am just going to read this quickly. So it reads, "Hello, Mrs. Lee. I'm a master's student at the University of Minnesota studying food science. I'm currently gathering career information and exploring options related to sensory and consumer insight work. I found your name and contact information from blank, and I'm contacting you because your job or employer interests me. I really like blank, or I'm interested in blank, or have heard cool things about your organization, company, the research you've done. I'm sure you're busy, but I'm wondering if you'd be willing to do an informational interview with you. I'd love to learn more about your work and the path you took to it, and any advice you might have for me. If you're willing and available the next month, week, couple of days or so, I'll schedule a 30-minute meeting with you so we can talk. If that would work for you, I'm generally available on Monday and Wednesdays morning, but might be able to meet at other times too. Thank you very much for considering this request. Sincerely, blank." So the core components you want to have when you're reaching out to folks are who you are, how you found this contact. If you have a mutual connection, this is a good place to put it in there, and why you reached out to them in your request. And so those are the components that you want to have. And so this is a nice template that you can use, or you can think about what's your own personal style for reaching out to people. Okay, and these are some questions that you might ask. And so you'll see that some of these are related to the industries, some of these are related to the role. It may also be just like a personal connection of who they are. And so the questions that you ask can have a variety of and it's a reflection of what's important for you as you're navigating your career. And if you make a request and people don't reply, you can follow up within a week to a week and a half. I'd say if you don't get a response in 2 weeks, that's okay. Maybe move on to a different contact. And if you do make a connection that you want to sustain, you can, I always recommend sending a thank you email or a note within the 24 hours that you meet with them, a week follow-up of in any ways that you utilize some of the information they give. You can also give an update 1 month to 3 months later, asking about how it's going for them if you want to sustain a relationship with them.
And then again, on LinkedIn, if you put in a keyword, people is one of the first categories, and you can just press connect. And I always recommend sending a personal note, because you can do that. And so I'm just adding a, hey, how did you find me? Why are you connecting with me? Is a helpful way for people to say, oh yeah, like I know this person, or I recognize them, or this is a mutual relationship connection that we have. So again, networking is about building and sustaining relationships. Really start early, starting with the relationships you have now, and think about how you can support them, as well as the ways that they can support you in growing your career or professional trajectory. And the next part is going to focus on job analysis. And so when you find opportunities, one of the first things you might ask yourself is this a job I want to apply to? Does this interest me? And remember that the kind of opportunities that you apply to is going to be a reflection of the skills that you want to use or want to learn, the values that are important for you, as well as the interest areas that you have. And so if you have questions about those, as well as goals, I encourage going back and revisit the first session that we did, and it's going to break those down into more detail. So finding opportunities, similar to the research, you can also use those resources to find opportunities. LinkedIn is a good place to do it. Sometimes I've seen people kind of just like Google, and that brings in a lot of resources from a couple different websites. Professional associations will sometimes have job boards. They reference solutions, also has that database, and then it also has a place to look for opportunities who are in your network. If you're looking for government or federal level jobs, USA Jobs, looking specifically at city, county, and state websites, those are places, a good place to look. And on Canvas, we also have a link for tips that are helpful for looking for government or federal jobs. So when you do find a posting, what are you going to find? You'll typically see a qualification section, a role description. They might have a preferred section. Some things that you might not be able to find on a posting might be what are the expectations or the objectives of the role, and those are something that you can ask via those informational interviews or during an actual interview. And they ask you if you have any questions. And then thinking about how does the role fit into the ecosystem of the organization. And so are you mostly going to be working in a team, and that's like the capacity that you interact with people, or is this a more central role that interacts with multiple components of the organization? So it's helpful to understand what is the structure and the ecosystem of the organization. The U of M, for example, someone who is unfamiliar with maybe a big institution might not know that we have several colleges, and that within the colleges there are departments, and within departments you have the director, and then you have folks who are doing research and who are teaching, or you have staff members, and how is that different from a faculty member or an instructor? And so knowing the ecosystems and the structures of an organization is a really helpful thing. That's also something you can ask about during an informational interview. So a couple of things that I'd like to highlight when you are pulling up a posting is, what are industry-specific language or terminologies that you can take note of and then incorporate into your material? What about the specific job tasks and responsibilities? Do they align with your interest areas? There might be industry-specific skills, and then there might be role-specific skills. And I do believe that in our first session, we go over these three skill sets here a little bit more in depth. And so if you're wondering how does a technical skill different from an interpersonal or personal skill, definitely revisit that first web workshop we did. Okay, and on Canva, we do also have a job search worksheet that you can use and ask some of these questions in terms of helping you identify if there's an alignment between what you're looking for and what a job is offering. So this is an example. So highlighted here are some technical skills. They have very engineering science language that I'm not super familiar with. And so being familiar with oncology, infectious diseases, having a PhD in chemistry or biochemistry,
publication skills, modern molecular biology technology, etc. And so as you're reading through this, it's helpful to identify, okay, what are the technical skills that I can offer? And is this important for this particular industry? I'd say if you're in any of the sciences, technical skills are highly valued. Then also think about interpersonal skills or personal attributes. And so they are also looking for people who can lead, who are innovators, trailblazers, who can work collaboratively. So I see collaboration, I see lead a couple of times. So for me, it's an indicator of, okay, they want someone who can work in a team together. As well as doing independent research, managerial skills, project management skills, and being innovative and creative. On the bottom here, you'll see problem solving, communication, presentation, writing skills. Those are all different interpersonal and personal attributes that you can then incorporate into your application material. And so that's how you might take a posting and identify the specific language for the role or language that's specific to a industry and start to connect that with your application material, which the next workshop will go over in more depth. Okay, so as I mentioned, it's helpful to understand how titles and organizational structures work. And so, for example, maybe folks start out as a technician. How is a technician different from an assistant and an associate to what is a professional title? And so it's helpful to understand the structures as well as what does advancement in the organization look like? So this is kind of just a helpful visual for that. Oh, I was also going to mention that sometimes organizations have different structures. And so an assistant in one place may be more similar to like a technician. So don't be too caught up in the titles. Really, when you're looking at a posting, dissect it a bit and look at those qualifications and skills and responsibilities, because that's going to give you a better idea of what the role entitles versus focusing on the specific name of the title. And that'll also broaden up the opportunities that you have access to as well. Okay, so similar to that concept, there is sometimes a specific or direct relationship between the areas of study that you are all often experts in, and then an indirect relationship. So for example, if you are in a science field, maybe medicine is the industry or the field that you're interested in. It could be engineering. If you're in human services, social work, teacher, those are direct correlations of qualifications, licenses, and areas of study. Now, what we want you to do is also start thinking about those indirect relationships that your field of study have to particular careers. And so maybe you've never thought about project management, but you're interested in a project management position within the field of medicine or within a field or within an organization that does engineering. And there's this transference of skills, and we call those transferable skills, that can allow more access to opportunities within different industries. I think one trend that I see more and more people doing are folks who don't have a background in technology, but are finding opportunities in technology or finding opportunities in healthcare. A good example is Google. They do a lot of really cool stuff. They also have multiple departments and do different things. And there are sociologists and psychologists who work within Google to analyze user trends and things like that. And so those are examples of indirect relationships that your field of study might have to particular careers that are not always clear, but is really valuable to know about and to understand how you have different skill sets that can be applied to a variety of roles, not being too consumed by the field or the specific title and looking at the job responsibilities. Okay, so similar to that, going beyond the surface of just those titles, are there opportunities where maybe you really like supervising and you have those skills to do that? So it's a job have those managerial and supervisory opportunities, or are you going to be more of a teammate and that's what aligns with your interests and skills? What about opportunities to work independently or collaboratively? How can you dissect that and learn a little bit more about that? And so this here kind of just talks a little bit about going beyond the surface and thinking about the role descriptions, understanding what might be expected of a particular industry or role, and that's oftentimes what you might hear during an informational interview. I had a panelist once, we were talking about finding opportunities, and they had started applying for a job, and as they were applying, they remembered that they had a connection who worked for the organization, and so they reached out and they asked a little bit about, like, do you know about this specific role? Do you have an idea of what they're looking for or what they're hoping to achieve with this role? Like, how can this candidate, this position, help them move forward? And then what was in the description was not encompassing of some of the conversations they were having. So they were able to have a more holistic approach to incorporating a variety of skills in there that wasn't just tailored to the job posting. So I'll also say that sometimes organizations use outdated postings. They don't always update them. And so it's good to know what they might be looking for, and to also know that it might not always be accurate, and that that's not something you can control. What you can do is find as much information as you can, and that those information interviews are really helpful when you're dissecting how to tailor your application material to a specific job or industry. And then organizing your search. My number one tip I always recommend is save a copy of your the job that you applied to. And if it's not downloadable, Control P or function. I don't know on Mac what it is, but Control P as if you're printing, and then there's an option to save it as a PDF. So always save a PDF version of it. Use a spreadsheet, use folders, anything that helps you stay organized in terms of the connections that you're making, as well as the applications you're submitting. You might have different versions of your resume that you submit for different jobs. So it's helpful to remember what you wrote in each of those, or the experiences that you included in them. Or maybe you wrote a statement that you really captures the work that you did. And if you don't save that version, you might not be able to remember it for the next application that you want to use it for. Let's see. Yeah, so these are a couple of things that can be helpful for you as you're thinking about staying organized. Let's see. On the Canvas page, I did also include a link to, I just looked it up really quickly. The Muse had a job search spreadsheet that you can use, or you can use that as a template and figure out what categories you would include for your organization structure as well too. Okay, that's my presentation. We're going to stop the content there, and we're going to open it up for conversation and or questions. I have with me Drew from the graduate school, and then Maria, who works at CLA, and who can also answer questions, but we'll be opening it up to that. Oh, and Mackenzie's here too. And Drew and Mackenzie, Maria, maybe you can help me figure out what questions are coming in. You can unmute, or you can put it into the chat. If it's gotten lost in the chat, feel free to put it back in.
Yeah, and I know, Megan, if you're willing to unmute yourself, I'm having a problem with that today. You had asked, I believe you had asked a question earlier on that I thought was better for a discussion in person than in the chat. So if you're willing to do that, we can go back to that one, because I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I was wondering, so you were showing different like keyword job search resources. I was wondering how those work for jobs that span many fields, like IT or finance, where like maybe you're working in higher education, but you could also be working in retail or stuff like that.
Do you want to respond first, Mackenzie?
Sorry, I think I don't quite understand the question. So also my speakers aren't great today.
Yeah, if I heard you correct, Megan, you had mentioned like, how do you tailor material for jobs that transcend like different industries? And so like project management, you can do project management in a variety of industries, or you can do like research in a variety of organizations. Is that correct? Oh, how do you find those jobs? Yeah, and so titles, I'd say, are a good way to do that, knowing what they're called. And so one of the things I recommend, even if you're not searching, is to go to an organization that maybe you're interested in and look at the postings, or go onto LinkedIn, and LinkedIn within a company will sometimes have people who work there, and then looking at their job titles and reviewing what are the kind of thing, the tasks that they are doing within those titles. And that can give you a sense of within this industry, maybe a project management role is more similar to something with a different title in a different organization. And so that's how you can do a little bit of research to learn the nuances, the different roles, and then starting to use those keywords to help you look for those opportunities as well too. Those professional associations are also a great place to find a variety of roles within different industries, because they'll oftentimes have a job board. Like, for example, if you're interested in higher education, you might go onto higher ed jobs, or if you're interested in library services, you might look for a professional association that does the work there. And then looking at the postings and the descriptions will help you make an alignment of what the specific job is doing versus just reviewing the titles. So those are a couple places. Grad job searches are a bit tricky because it requires a bit more navigation. And so it might also be helpful to keep track of what information you're finding with different websites, if it's updated. And so if their postings are like multiple months old, you might know that it's not an active site. And so you might use a different site to look for opportunities. A good place to start, I always say, it's just starting by Googling things and seeing where things are being posted, and then going directly to an organization's website and looking at their postings there. That's a nice way to go start broad and then come in narrow.
Yeah, Carolyn, I would just add to that. I mean, there's no one easy solution for this. I mean, I like Indeed.com because, although I haven't looked at the new format, you can do Boolean searching in there. So as you're learning, like, okay, well, in this field it's called that, or I sometimes with my humanities students, they're looking for research positions, but not research scientists. And so because you can do Boolean searching, once you kind of learn the language, you can rule things out, or you can say like, I think this is the keyword. And if it turns up the wrong kind of thing, you do it's a lot of a kind of an iteration. But those more advanced job search engines, once you start learning the keywords you're looking for, you can start ruling out other things too. But for sure, it's an iterative process.
Mm-hmm. And I see in the chat here, Catherine had mentioned that on Handshake, there are companies that will do informational sessions. And so recruiters are good people to talk with, because their job is to draw in as many candidates as possible. And so they can give insight information about some of the concepts that we're talking about that can be tricky to find out as well too, like job titles and what does advancement in the field look like, or often do people move within positions, things like that. Yeah.
Carol, we have another question here.
Sure.
It says, this is somewhat related to networking. I was reading about mentoring in the toolkit. Is anyone aware if there are formal mentoring programs through grad school CHD for grad students to mentor undergrad students? The only thing that I know of is, through the Maroon and Gold network, you can sort of individually mentor people. I am unaware of formal programs, although that doesn't mean they don't exist. Drew or Carolyn, are you aware of anything?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it kind of spurred a desire to maybe want to start something. But I don't know of anything very formal either. But Maroon and Gold is a nice platform to be able to at least do those things and to maybe establish at least that initial conversation and possibly an informational interview through the platform. But that's a great question. I think that might be potentially be a gap in a program that we could look at.
I'd say the closest thing I can think of are graduate teaching positions, and that might allow for some of that mentoring, advising type of dynamic. Also, any assistantships where you get to work with different demographics, or you have the opportunity to connect with undergraduate students. I'd say those are probably the most like structured ways, but it can be a little bit tricky. The other thing is that we have a lot of student groups at the U, and so if you are interested in providing services or you're interested in supporting students, they also student groups are, I don't know if they're required to, but they often have an advisor, and so that's another place where you can support and do that mentoring type relationship, is through student groups and reaching out for like, for example, we have a business and marketing business student group that they will bring in folks who work in the industry. And so even being a part of those, there are also grad groups that you can be a part of, and hearing what people are doing across campus might also be helpful too. But yeah, nothing unfortunately structured and created right now that I know of.
Maria, have you ever heard of anything like that through individual departments? I mean, I know that you were in German and it could be different in other departments, but have you ever heard of anything like that?
Not really.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. The other thing is some, well, people can apply for scholarships and fellowships, and those might also be places where if you reach out to like the coordinators of those things, if you've been a recipient of a scholarship or a fellowship and you wanted to provide that service, you can also ask them if that's something that they'd be able to make a connection between as well too. So yeah, those are a couple things I can think about. Wonderful. Other questions or things that popped up in the chat I missed?
I actually have a question. I guess like something that I was thinking about, just because I want to like open my horizons and just think a little bit more holistically about possibilities for myself. I was thinking about like, how do you search for jobs, I guess, that are not in the United States? I don't know if there's like any advice on that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of something that I was thinking about, but I also wasn't sure because I feel like there are some other complications with like degree transfers and visas and all that type of stuff. So I don't know. This is just like a possibility I was thinking about.
I'm happy to take what I know on that one. So are you a US citizen, like a domestic US citizen?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're going to encounter visa issues in other countries, you know, whether they're willing to issue your work permit or not. But the best source I've seen for that we have at the university is Going Global, which you can access probably both through the libraries, but definitely through Handshake. And it has guides for different countries, and it lets you know what the visa stipulations are. So there's a section in there called International Job Searching for US Domestic Students or something like that. The best that I know about. Carolyn or Drew, Maria, you know of anything else?
I can also just speak from an international perspective, since I'm not from the US. And it really depends on the country, and also if you speak the language, because a lot of the time, if you don't speak the language, it is much more limited where you can work in a different country. So if you have a specific country in mind, and if you speak the language, it is also really helpful to speak maybe to your professors that might have more information there, and find whatever the LinkedIn is wherever you would like to work, because countries are different, and a lot of the time they have their own versions of very typical job sites or Monster or whatever you want. And finding out what those are is really helpful. And then you can usually there is an English interface, at least for that's true for a lot of European countries. So that would be my additional advice.
My only experience with that has been searching, or kind of like encountering companies that are global, that will have, using project management as a kind of a running example, they'll have a project manager, program manager position open in an international office. And then by kind of going on, like following that job post or that job description, kind of seeing what would be necessary for or able for, in this case, a US citizen to apply to. So that context is more of a kind of a global company setting, but just my 2 cents on that.
So I just pulled up the Going Global website, and under country guide, you can select countries, you can select cities, and then hiring opportunities, getting the job, and finding a job are great ways to look for opportunities, resources. This particular one helps you understand like what application material might look like in different countries as well as visas and permits. And so I haven't done international job search, but we hear really good things about the Going Global. And then I will also say that sometimes the International Student Support Services Office will also bring in an alumni or folks who work in other countries, companies that are hiring, and that's also a nice place to see organizations that are hiring from an international perspective as well too. Oh, thank you for that question.
So let's see, we have one other question here. Question about science technical skills. Any advice for navigating having some skills, computer coding, but not having all the skills while trying to be a competitive candidate against those who've been to specific boot camps? Don't want to go to another boot camp. Another example of this might be project management skills too. So it sounds like what you're asking about is jobs where you may be competing with somebody who has the exact degree or who has been through a boot camp to gain the skills, and you're thinking you have similar skills, but maybe skills that aren't as beefed up as another person. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. Drew, do you want to talk about some of the badging that grad school does?
Yeah. I was going to say, there are opportunities to kind of through the U, kind of underneath the boot camp, in earning badges or kind of stacked credentials that we offer. There are a lot of kind of online opportunities for that. But I did want to say too that don't let that deter you from applying for that job. Your ability to learn new things might be something that employer is looking for, and the employer's ability to train you in those things and for you to be receptive and therefore possibly excel at those positions, at those skills might be what they're looking for. So, being an expert in a field going into a job, that might show an employer, well, I don't know if we could train this employee, because if they think they already kind of feel like they're an expert in something, can they kind of form to the specific company's culture? So I would say don't let that deter you.
Yeah, I like to talk about this because sometimes it comes up, but this concept of being like overqualified is a really odd thing to think about. And so similar to what Drew said, part of job searching is being your best advocate. And so if you feel like you have skill sets that's been demonstrated through experience, that's going to speak differently than someone who's taken a course who can do it. Because it's because they've taken a course, it's because they have a certificate. It might not mean that they have the application ability that you have through experiences that you've been able to have. And so know that a part of the career job search process are articulating your skills and clearly communicating by sharing examples, how you have demonstrated your ability to showcase those skills in the past and how you're going to bring it to an organization. And so that happens with your cover letter, your resume, the interview. And so that's one way to do it. And then of course, throughout life, there's going to be opportunities to learn and grow. And so it's definitely something to think about, is if there are skill sets that seem pretty common for industry, how can you start to build some of those skills as well through certificates or courses or experience. And I see we're at time. So thank you everyone for the questions. The recording will be up but then this week, if not next week. And then we have 2 more sessions. Let me get my dates correct. The 13th, which is next Thursday, and then our last one will be on the 20th. And so hopefully we'll see you for the next 2 there. We appreciate you coming in, taking your lunch time with us, and hopefully you all go get some food or debrief a little bit, visit the Canvas page. And so we appreciate everyone being here with us today. Thanks.